Faith Film Festival. I'm your host, Marissa Harba.
And I am Joe Esteves. And Marissa, I don't recognize this place. Where the heck are we?
I think we're in the middle of Times Square, Joe.
Times Square, ladies and gentlemen, which is, of course,
the center of the world.
Why is that important? Because we have films
from all over the world.
There's films, ladies and gentlemen, about faith, about hope, about the celebration of life. You're gonna love them. So don't you go anyplace. We're gonna be right back with our first film. You be there.
See you then. Our first film sheds light on a very important day in our nation's history. It's called In My Seat, a pilot's story.
It's a film that after you see it, you're gonna remember it for a long time. Let's take a look.
On an emotional level, at first, it didn't really sink in. And I think a lot of people that are close to an event like that, you know, you're kind of in a sort of a dream state for a little bit. You're kind of trying to figure out what happened, and I finally started to piece it all together later on that evening.
And when he finally did get a hold of me, he just kept saying, "It wasn't me. Don't worry, it wasn't me."
Well, I've been with American Airlines since 1991, so we're coming up on my 20th anniversary with American. I've been a pilot a little bit longer than that. I was first employed by the Navy. I flew P-3s out of Brunswick, Maine, and I was on active duty for 8 years. I got about 3,500 hours of P-3 time in those 8 years. And then I got hired by American Airlines, and currently I fly the Boeing 757 and 767 airplanes.
It's interesting because you don't know what's going to happen September 11th when you're living September 10th. And I just remember September 10th because September in New England is beautiful. It's not quite fall, but it's cooler than it would be other places. And I'd taken them to the library, and I was sitting outside drinking a coffee while they were in the library, and for the first time really thanking the Lord because I felt safe. I thought, wow, we're all here and it's safe, and what in the world could ever happen in Georgetown, Maine?
September 10th is a date that means, you know, a great deal to me because I did what I normally do on September 10th, the day before I become available to go flying, and my flying is in blocks of days of availability. So I was available to go flying on September 11th. So at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on September 10th, I sat down at the computer and I logged in like I normally do and to check to see if there was any unassigned flying for the next day. And sure enough, there was one trip that was available on September 11th. It was American Airlines Flight 11 out of Boston's Logan Airport to Los Angeles. It was a 2-day trip, got back on the second day. Left, I think, at about, I don't know, 7:40, 7:45 in the morning, something around that time frame. And I looked at it, and there was no pilot assigned to it yet. So the next thing what I do is I go and check and see if there's any reserve pilots available. Now, I know I'm available, but there might be some other guys available. And it just so happened on September 11th, 2001, there was only one guy available to go flying on that day, and that was me. So I've been through this drill a lot of times over the years. I went and in fact, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to Los Angeles tomorrow. I went out to the car and I opened up the trunk and I got my dirty luggage out of the trunk and I threw it in the wash machine and I packed my bags with the new clean stuff and took it back out to the car and I said, I'm going to LA. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in fact, in those days, what's called crew scheduling at American Airlines would actually assign my name to that trip.
I ironed his shirt, which I always do, and put his epaulettes on his shoulder and found the ID and, you know, made sure he had everything packed he needed. And we just prepare. When you're a military family, you prepare in a certain way. When you're an airline family, it's the same thing. There's just a routine and kind of a checklist you go through to prepare for Dad to leave on a trip.
The final assignment comes via the phone call. So they make, you know, positive contact communication with you. It's not just in the computer. They'll call and they'll say, hey, we want to let you know you've been assigned a trip. Now, I might know that already by looking into the computer. I could already see that, but a real person will call you and say, Scheibner, it's now your trip. And now at that point, once you have that phone conversation, even if a line pilot wants to, they can't bump you off that trip. So they've only got a 30-minute window of opportunity. Once that phone call gets made, it's a done deal. I waited for the phone call, and the phone never rang, which is not completely unusual. It's not the norm, but it's not completely out of the question either. In fact, I didn't even think about it for a while. It was later on that evening I thought, hey, you know, they never assigned that trip to me. And then I really didn't give it another thought because, well, what that means is I still get paid, but I've got tomorrow off. I'm still available to go flying, but you know, they never finalized an assignment, so I guess I can, you know, brush off my ambitions to do something else that day. What was taking place I was unaware of, was the fact that a fellow by the name of Tom McGinnis, who was one of those line-holding pilots, a little bit senior to me. Tom was celebrating his birthday on September 10th with his wife and his children. And Tom did what I did that afternoon, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He went over to the computer and he logged in and he looked and he saw that that flight was open, but my name had been penciled in. And he knew he was still in that 30-minute window of opportunity. So Tom called down to American Airlines and said, hey, you know, I just want to check with you. Am I legal to take this trip? In other words, can I bump Scheibner off that trip? And they did what they do with the computer down there, and they got back to him and said, yep, you're legal for that trip, but you got to give us a call back in the next, 20 minutes, or else we're going to finalize the assignment. I assume that Tom had some sort of conversation with his wife, and he called back. He called American Airlines, and he said, yeah, I'll take that trip. So at that moment, they erased my name off the trip. They assigned it to Tom. I didn't know any different because they never called. And Tom showed up for work that day on September 11th. As you recall, on the East Coast, it was a beautiful day that day. They pushed back off the gate on time, and they took off on time, and Tom was actually flying. It was his leg to Los Angeles that day. And they flew up to about 23,000 feet, and Tom engaged the autopilot to take him the rest of the way to Los Angeles. And at that moment, all hell broke loose on the airplane. I mean, there's not another way to express it.
The cockpit's not answering. Somebody's stabbed in business class. And I think there's mates that we can't breathe. I don't know. I think we're getting hijacked. Which flight are you on?
Flight 12.
Flight 12. Okay, no, we're on Flight 11 right now. This is Flight 11.
It's Flight 11. I'm sorry, Nitty.
Boston to Los Angeles.
Yes.
And what seat are you in? Ma'am, are you there?
Yes.
What seat are you in?
Ma'am, what seat are you in? We just left Boston. We're up in the air.
I know.
We're supposed to go to L.A., and the cockpit's not answering their phone.
Okay, but what seat are you sitting in? What's the number of your seat?
Okay, I'm in my jump seat right now.
Okay.
At 3R.
Okay, you're the flight attendant?
Our number 1 has been stabbed, and our 5 has been stabbed. Can anybody get up to the cockpit? Can anybody get up to the cockpit? Okay, we can't even get into the cockpit. We don't know who's up there. Is anybody still there?
Yes, we're still here.
Okay. I'm staying on the line as well.
Okay.
What's going on, honey? Okay, the aircraft is erratic again. Bobbing very erratic. Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there? Betty?
I didn't have a TV on, I didn't have a radio on. We were just doing our schoolwork. And pretty soon the head contractor called me. His guys had called him because they realized that Steve wasn't home. And he called me and said, where is Steve today? And I said, well, he's at the Navy. He had gone to work for the Navy that day since he didn't get an airline trip. And the problem with the contractors was they were scared. They thought he had been on that flight and they were going to be dealing with this distraught woman who had just lost her husband.
It really started to come home to me, the emotional gravity of what happened when my cell phone started to ring. But a secretary at a school that I used to attend looked up my cell phone number, and she was the first person to call. And I answered the phone, and Evie was on the end of the phone, and she heard my voice and she started crying. And when she started crying, I started crying. And so she was just happy to hear my voice. And it wasn't 2 minutes after I got off with her that somebody else called, friends of ours from down in Texas. And I thought, you know, I need to get ahead of this and make some phone calls. So I called home and I called to different places. I still didn't realize that that was the flight that I was supposed to be on. You know, I'm watching it on TV like everybody else, and it didn't click with me. I knew the flight number and everything. It still didn't click with me. When it finally clicked with me was later on that evening. I thought, you know, I wonder who was on that flight. And I thought, well, maybe I can go find out the names, because the media wasn't going to give you the names for a few days. I thought maybe there's a way through the login process at American to find out the names. And so I did. I did what I did the day before on September 10th. I logged in, and when the screen came up in front of me, it looked exactly like it did the day before when it had that trip and it had my name penciled in. Except this time, it had this trip sequence. My name wasn't there, and it said these 3 words: sequence failed continuity. That's code at the airlines for the trip never made it to its destination. Wow, what an understatement. Sequence failed continuity. And at that moment, when I got that visual look at the screen, I was overwhelmed. I said, you know what? I packed my bags to go on that trip. And then I was even more curious at who had bumped me. But the words can't describe that moment of realizing that you should have been someplace. You asked me about guilt a little while ago. Yeah, you do have a twinge of guilt. 20 years ago, I wrote a life objective. And my life objective goes like this. It's to seek, trust, and glorify God through humble service and continual prayer, to raise up qualified disciples as quickly as possible, so that someday I might hear God say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." The events of September 11th took that life objective that I already had, and it intensified it for me. The fire just keeps getting hotter as I get older. But someday I want to stand in the Lord's presence, and I want him to say, "Well done." I would hate to get in God's presence and have him say, "Oh yeah, Scheibner, I see your name's down here. Well, you know, have a seat." I need to hear the Lord say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." That's what's on my plate, and that's what's driving me these days. Why does God take one and leave another? It's not because I'm a better person or God wanted to do more with me than he wanted to with Tom. I think in God's providence, that's obviously his choice. What has stuck with me all these years is the fact that he did leave me behind, is that I need to act like I'm living on borrowed time, because I am. I can look and see my smoking hole, and it was on national TV. And I saw where I should have died, but I didn't. And now there's an obligation that comes with that. I've got to live my days with a sense of urgency. I have to make sure I get the most out of them, and not the most for me. I think we live in a world where everybody's kind of out to get the most for them. This is not about me. This is about the distinct privilege I've been given to know that somebody died in my place. What I know is that somebody died in my place not once, but twice. That's where God comes into the whole thing for me. See, Tom sat in a seat that I was qualified to sit in, and by all rights, that was my seat that day. I should have been in that seat. In fact, I've sat in the very seat of that airplane that Tom was in. I've flown all of the 757s and 767s American Airlines owned, so I know what it's like literally to sit in that seat, but I am still, all these years later, still qualified to sit in that seat, and I could have. But Tom didn't die for my sins. You see, God sent his own son to die for my sins. Jesus Christ was the other one who died in my place, and he hung, and he bled, and he suffered on a cross to pay a price for me that I wasn't qualified to pay. I couldn't have hung on the cross. I didn't have the same qualifications. So one guy sat in a seat that I should have sat in, the other hung and bled on a cross. One is far more significant than the other. That's not to trivialize what happened to Tom. It's to elevate and glorify what God did for me and for mankind on the cross.
Wow, that was an incredible film. I think everybody remembers what it was like that day.
You know, it makes me think of how many times maybe that I've just missed an accident or I've just missed something falling on me, but
Yeah.
I've never known it. So
Yeah, it could have been you.
yeah. So
It's a scary thought.
it makes us all think. Look, we got another great little film coming up for you, so stay put. You're gonna enjoy this one even more.
Don't go away. Welcome back. Our next film brings hope and faith to a brand new level.
Hope really does spring eternal. Our film is called Project Hopeful. Now you watch,
And then we'll talk.
No. Come on, Josh.
I'm tired.
All right, well, I guess we'll just have to leave you alone while you're sleeping.
No.
And we'll be over here. Got grass in your hair.
Stop it.
We'll have to put you in your bed if you're sleeping.
Bedtime.
No.
Okay, then
Then
can you
take your meds.
take your medicine, please. Show everybody how you take your medicine.
Because you're so both shy, yeah.
Don't get you dumb like that.
They don't believe you can do it.
No.
Dash, you
Do
can't
the
do it.
medicine dance.
Do this and that.
Want to do number one? Oh, you want to do Bill's first? All right. Yes?
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Okay, now take your medicine.
Hey, stop it.
Show them how fast you can do it.
Oh, man.
Look, I'm gonna time you. Go.
What?
Go. I'm gonna time you. Go.
What's this?
No, you can't see it unless you take your medicine.
No one sees
It's a secret invisible watch.
See, look, that's how cool it is. You can't see it. Isn't that awesome?
Why?
All right.
Yay.
Well, as you know, today is Orphan Sunday at the Moody Church, and we have a ministry here called Hope for Kids. I'd like to introduce this young lady. I've not met her before, but Carolyn Tweetmeyer. Did I get that right? Like a bird, you said, Tweetmeyer. Carolyn, first of all, who are these people that you brought with you today?
This is a small portion of our family. We have 7 biological children and 7 adopted children, 2 sibling groups of 3 from Ethiopia, and a domestic foreign-born adoption. Our little Sophia was delivered on Easter Sunday.
I would see that these children are starving, they don't have food, they don't have families, and I would recognize that what we had in our house, and the reality that it absolutely made no sense that these children live like that when we have so much. It bugged me then, and it bugs me now. What God has allowed us to do and accomplish through Him in the last 5 years is insanity. Absolute insanity.
I like to hang out with Carolyn because I can say I only have 6 kids.
It literally falls on top of you. Literally right on top of you. Now.
It's up there.
You know I know.
Okay, Mom, where'd it go? Okay, we'll put it in your house.
That's your book. Best family in the world. Are you gonna sit still for this one?
Yes.
Okay. One fine morning in May, the orphanage director called Carlotta into her office. You've been adopted by a family, Carlotta, she said. They're coming for you tomorrow. Carlotta closed her eyes and made a wish. I hope my new family is the best family in the world. And Carlotta still couldn't sleep. Maybe, what if the best family in the world was, oh, they're here. And beneath the starry sky of her bedroom, Carlotta Perez never thinks, maybe, what if? Because now she knows she is the best family in the world.
When they brought her in the room, it was this little angel who I would have missed if I had kept insisting on what I wanted, as opposed to who could know better for me than God. God was telling us to do something, and we were telling ourselves we're going to be obedient, but we weren't. And so here's this tiny, tiny little angel, and she was mine.
I said, send me the waiting child list. Don't send me pictures. So she sent me descriptions, and I saw the first 3 children on there that were African. And there was a little baby boy at about 3 months old that didn't have HIV, a 4-year-old HIV positive little boy, and then his 9-year-old sister. And immediately I thought, my goodness, who would take that package? Who wants that package? Everybody wants that baby boy. Very few want the older girl, and nobody's going to want that baby boy with HIV. And I immediately thought, those kids are going to be separated. And at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't say it out loud, but I'm thinking in my head, how can I possibly endanger our whole family? We had 7 children at the time. And I thought, how can we endanger them? I thought, you know, like most people thought, you can get it from a sippy cup or a toilet seat or a bathtub. And I kind of put it out of my head. And with that, I thought, you know, everyone deserves at least a chance. If even me, the way that I think, would say absolutely no, then who says yes to situations like this?
No?
Here, scoot back so Arena can hold you.
Here, I'm squeezed as a pancake. No. Arena, where's the door at?
It's on. No, on top is the door.
Anastasia's from Ukraine, from Crimea, Ukraine, and Arena's from Kharkiv, Ukraine. And Samuel and Seth and me are biological.
Hello.
Color code my syringes. What? It's a combination of 3 meds to keep the
you got
virus from replicating.
In your eye.
You want your medicine?
That's an awful lot.
Your shot there. Hey! Okay, Sammy. Move, son. Right here, right here. Stay here.
Look, I don't know if this one over here can
No.
Look up. Sam,
This one. Come on. Gotta take your medicine if you want some more cake. She's very smart, little girl. He knows what to do. Good girl. Yeah, I know, sugar. Okay, you take that, and then this, and we can have another piece of cake, okay? There we go, good girl. Okay, here's your chaser.
That's real
I'm
nice.
taking my medicine. I'm gonna bite it.
You wanna bite it? No, I had to put it on your tongue. Everybody else gets medicine, so thinks he has to have something. So since he doesn't have anything that he needs medicine for, we give him probiotics.
Let's go.
Hey.
While we were in Ethiopia getting the 3 of them, I met my little Selah. Selah was so sick that we were told she would not get on a plane because her hemoglobin level was a 4, and you cannot travel on an airplane with a low hemoglobin level because you don't get enough oxygen and you will die in flight. And they then told me that they will not use their blood bank blood on AIDS patients because the blood is so scarce. So of course, God would do this, and only God would do this. They said, well, and they said it sarcastically, if you're a match, well then maybe we can give her your blood. And lo and behold, I'm in Africa, one who can't drive on expressways, or next thing you know, I'm getting stuck with needles in a third world country, in a clinic to give blood, and sure enough, we were a match. And what they said would take at least a week of bringing her blood levels up took 1 transfusion.
I want that game. I want playing that game. Stop. Scoop. We need peanut butter. Mama, turkey or that dog? I have an those? Yeah, I love those. They take 2. You're gonna go with me.
It is 2011, and there's way too many of us for things like this to be occurring. Kyle and I say if we could put it into words, if we could figure it out, there would be no orphans. With that, I would encourage you to consider that we're all special needs, and we have the capability to eliminate that, to take it off the face of the planet.
Wow, what an incredible story. Can you even imagine adopting 7 children other than your own?
It really gives you pause. You know, I think in my life, I do my share, but I watch these 3 couples with their children, and I think, my gosh, God bless the world for having people like this in it, and
absolutely
makes me aspire to be one of them. Listen, stay with us. Our next film coming up is
Colors of Freedom.
So stay there. Here it comes.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. Come now, and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white. Though they be like crimson, they shall be as wool. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Thy word is a lamp under my feet, and a light unto my path. The wicked have laid a snare for me, yet I err not from thy precepts. Thy testimonies have I taken as heritage forever, for they are the rejoicings of my heart. I have inclined my heart to perform thy statutes always. There be scriptures saying a good workman take care of his tools. He cleans them and he prepares them for whatever task he has in his path. The best prepared man is the best a man could be, no matter his situation. He is my shepherd. He make me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Thy mercy, O Lord, endureth forever. Forsake not the works of thine own hands. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even my enemies and my foes, came upon me to eat my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this I will be confident. For in the time of trouble, he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock. And now shall my head be lifted above my enemies around me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is my right hand, I shall not be moved. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. For the former things are passed away. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, thou wilt revive me. Thou shalt stretch forth thine hand against the wrath of my enemies, and thy right hand shall save me. For he shall deliver the needy when he crieth, the poor also, and him that hath no helper. He shall spare the poor, and he shall save the souls of the needy. He shall redeem their souls from deceit and violence, and precious shall their blood be in his sight. Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free, and be not entangled again with the yoke of bondage. Grace be to you, and peace from God the Father, and from our Lord Jesus Christ, who gave himself for our sins, that he might deliver us from this present evil world, according to the will of God the Father, to whom be the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Well, I think my favorite part of that entire film was the look on that man's face when he saw his certificate of freedom.
Absolutely.
Can you even imagine what that feels like?
In my heart of hearts, I could not. It's interesting, you know, that this film was obviously in color, and our main characters were black and white. It was, in essence, a black and white film.
I like the juxtaposition. Can't even talk. Juxtaposition of the parallel stories.
Easy for you to say. Yeah, it is a film. I think that therefore a painting, it would be an abstract. I think it was a good film. I think, quite frankly, it's going to have to be something that I digest and think about it more tomorrow. But next week, I want you to be back here with Faith Films Festival, where we celebrate hope and faith, celebration of life. Marissa, Joe Esteves, we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.